So in a fight that was actually on the prelims, which was pretty surprising because this card isn't really even all that deep, Ryan Hall fought against Darren Elkins in a fight where to me it really seemed like a fight where Ryan Hall is either going to prove that he's for real or that he isn't. If you look at his record up to this point, um, he lost his first fight back in 2006. Didn't fight MMA again for almost 6.5 years, and then since then has gone 8-0. But we had that gap since 2016 when he beat Gray Maynard, just beat BJ Penn, which isn't exactly the most impressive thing considering everyone who's been fighting BJ Penn of late has beaten BJ Penn. But this fight with Darren Elkins really means a lot because Elkins is one of those guys where he can really show where you're at in a division. If you look at Elkins' record, which is what I'm going to pull up right now, he's beaten a lot of good guys, but he's also given tough fights to a lot of good guys. So if you just look at who he's fought, so we'll go all the way back to his UFC debut just to run through all the guys he's faced. So he beat Dwayne Ludwig in 44 seconds with an ankle injury, so it seems like a bit of a fluke win there. I don't remember that fight at all. Lost to Charles Oliveira, beat Michihiro Magawa, beat Tia Trinh Jing, beat Jacob Brandao, beat Steven Siler, beat Antonio Carvalho, lost to Chad Mendez, beat Hatsuki Yoki, lost to Jeremy Stevens, beat Lucas Martins, lost to Hakron Diaz, beat Robert Whitterford. Actually had a 6-fight win streak here, which was fairly recently. Beat Chaz Skelly, beat Godofredo Pepe, beat Mirsad Bektik, who was up higher on the card here, beat Dennis Bermudez, and beat Michael Johnson. Has some recent losses, though, to Alex Volkanovski and Ricardo Lamas, and then obviously the Ryan Hall loss. But the thing with Ryan Hall, he's one of these fighters, and it seems like we have a handful of guys like this right now. Ben Askren was one of them up until that loss to Jorge Masvidal, where they're guys who are just surging towards the top of the divisions, who are relatively, I guess I wouldn't say one dimensional with a guy like Askren, because though Askren has a very strong dimension in his wrestling, his mat grappling is a second dimension, even if it's not technically Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and he's very good at that too. Ryan Hall, I don't know that his striking definitely has plenty of holes in it. His wrestling is kind of bizarre in that he doesn't need to like take you down and come up on top. He can do his Imanari roll and just end up in a leg entanglement, and that's fine for him. Although he oftentimes misses those more often than he gets them. But even still, Ryan Hall is one of these guys where he's definitely a specialist, and it's interesting to see how these specialists deal with guys who are towards the top of their division, and guys who are more well rounded. So this Elkins fight was really interesting to me because Elkins is a guy who's got decent striking. He's not like a great striker or anything, but it's decent. It's been improving. Known for his wrestling, and then known for being pretty tough on top and pretty tough to submit. So it was kind of interesting to see here how Elkins was going to approach this fight, and then how Ryan Hall is going to be able to handle it. I figured Elkins would be a little bit more willing to engage on the ground than he was. Now, granted, Ryan Hall is an excellent triangle. I think there's like I don't know that it's an actual stat if it's just like more of like an urban myth, but apparently he has like 200 triangle chokes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition. So it's not as though being on top of him in guard is the most safe place to be, even if you're allowed to punch. So I guess I get from that standpoint, if that's what he's looking at going in, that's why I never really wanted to go into his guard. But either way, Elkins is one of those guys where I expected him and his more well-rounded game to be too much for Ryan Hall. When you watch Ryan Hall, he keeps his hands down all the time when he's striking. Um, when he's um, when he's throwing his kicks, oftentimes he's available to be countered. When he rolls underneath for the Imanari roll, oftentimes he's risking getting kneed in the face. So you feel like there are a lot of openings to hit him with. And the thing is that oftentimes when he goes for these Imanari rolls, he misses. So it's not as though it's one of those things where you have to be afraid that if he gets through on one Imanari roll, you're screwed. Granted, if he catches it right, you're in trouble. But more often than not, if he goes for an Imanari roll, he's not going to end up catching a leg or getting close on a submission attempt. If you actually look at the stats on this fight, there's only one submission attempt that was counted. I don't know which one they counted, but if it was how I saw it, that one submission attempt was actually a triangle attempt at the end of the first round. So he never even really got that close on a leg lock attempt, even though he rolled for it over and over and over in this match. Um, Again, these stats 0 for 1. That's I guess the person who's scoring stats on that is looking at takedowns more as in taking down where you're trying to end up on top. I think an Imanari roll effectively is a takedown, but I guess that's not how they scored it. And with just a quick highlight from there, this is really what surprised me is that Ryan Hall. Yes, he has a lot of spinning kicks that he likes to throw. Oftentimes, he likes to keep his distance by doing them. So the idea is that if he's keeping you at the end of his foot or at the end of his heel, it's tough to get inside and counter unless you kind of time it right and then are able to avoid that. So he was able to drop Elkins with a spinning heel kick in the first round, which was shocking, but also pretty surprising. He was able to drop him with a punch right here. And the thing is that Darren Elkins, like you could tell that he fought with knowledge of what Ryan Hall is capable of doing, and I think you could argue he gave him too much respect, and that oftentimes when he was fighting, he almost kind of got frozen out there. Didn't want to engage in any grappling, even though he's a pretty good grappler himself. When he was striking, he was oftentimes worried about Hall shooting underneath for a leg, and that ended up leaving him open to get dropped a couple different times by Ryan Hall. But in beating a guy like Darren Elkins and in beating him in this way, where I mean, I guess if you look at the stats, it was a little bit closer than you might have gotten the feeling. I think most people, when they watched it, they thought it was 3 rounds to 0 for Ryan Hall. Some people even thought it was 30-26, and the first round was a 10-8. I think the total strikes, it was 40-31 for the total fight. A lot of those strikes were when Ryan Hall would spin under for a leg, end up just kind of sitting in guard, and then Elkins would throw some leg kicks at him. Those do count for something. They're not like majorly effective, but they're not nothing either. But either way, at this point, I think Ryan Hall really does have an argument to say that he deserves a fight against a top 15 guy now. Elkins wasn't ranked, but beating a guy like Elkins and beating him pretty cleanly there without taking a whole lot of damage is pretty impressive. So if you got the rankings right here at featherweight, you're looking at Ricardo Lamas at the bottom of the rankings. Lamas also has a win over Elkins. That was his last win. You have Shane Burgos, Arnold Allen, who just worked his way in there, Mirsad Bektik, Calvin Cater, Josh Emmett, Hanano Moicano, Jeremy Stevens. I don't know that we'd really want to go quite this high for Ryan Hall. So if we're looking at a next fight for him, I know one of the ones that people are talking about is Kron Gracie. Kron Gracie isn't ranked right now, and he only has one win in the UFC, so he's going to have a fight with Cub Swanson in October. But I don't know the timing would really work out where that'd be the most sensible next fight for Ryan Hall. And I think Ryan Hall has a fair point in that he should be fighting a ranked fighter. So unless Kron Gracie just runs through Cub Swanson and the people who do rankings give him enough credit where they put him in the top 15, I don't know that fight's going to be the next fight for both of those guys. So if you have Ricardo Lamas as the next matchup, I mean, I guess the Darren Elkins matchup kind of gave me pause. I guess one little thing to mention is that I put out a little parlay on this fight card where I picked Darren Elkins, I picked Josh Emmett, and I also picked Andre Fili, and almost won a plus 800 won a plus 800 bet on that, but unfortunately for me, Darren Elkins fell through. The other two worked out for me, but after beating Elkins, I think the idea of putting Ricardo Lamas against Ryan Hall, as crazy as it kind of sounds, and it's still trying to sink in, I think that's actually a reasonable fight. The Burgos fight would be pretty interesting as well. Shane Burgos, very good striker, decent grappler. He's a very good boxer, very fast hands. For a guy like Ryan Hall, keeps his hands down a lot. It'd be interesting to see if Burgos is willing to throw like he does with most people, and if he's able to catch him, or if Burgos kind of freezes up in a similar way to Elkins. If he does, then you can potentially see Ryan Hall get a victory there. Arnold Allen just worked his way into the top 13. I don't know that you really want to put prospect versus prospect there with him versus Ryan Hall. Bektik just came off of a loss. So there's an argument to be made that maybe you give Bektik that fight if you think Bektik still is a guy who at some point has the ability to work towards the title. And you could say, hey, here's a guy who's probably not going to knock you out. Although, I mean, he just dropped Darren Elkins twice, so who knows? But you give him that fight and see where they go from there. That's an option. I don't think Calvin Cater would make a whole lot of sense. I think Cater should be fighting guys who are ranked higher than him, not fighting a guy who's unranked right now in Ryan Hall. And then Josh Emmett, I think he should also be moving up in the rankings. So among these guys, I think Ricardo Lamas, Shane Burgos, and Mirsad Bektik are all pretty good options. And I feel like it's crazy to be saying that about Ryan Hall right now, that those three guys are guys who would make sense for him to fight next. But after that performance against Darren Elkins, you kind of have to put him in there and see how he does.